Good morning, everyone. We're going to call our meeting to order at this time. Mr. Superintendent, do we have any public comments or presentation?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. Ms. Johnson? No, we don't have it.
All right, thank you. Next, we will review the agenda, give board members an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. Will we need an executive session, Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, sir, we will need one for property and personnel.
Thank you. Right, we will go through the agenda. Item 1, consideration and adoption of the minutes from the regular board meeting held on January 10th. Do any board members have any questions, comments? Item number 2, consideration and recommendation for employment of personnel. Any questions, comments? Item number 3, consideration of recommendation for release of personnel. Are there any comments or questions? Item number 4, consideration of recommendation to approve from the Finance Committee a bid for the, I guess I'm pronouncing it, hyper coverage infrastructure for the district.
Hyper-converged.
Okay. Any questions about that? Item number 5, consideration of recommendation to approve from the Building and Grounds Committee. A, high school baseball, softball field renovation, change order number 4. 5B, indoor air cleaning device, change order number 4. 5C, analog camera replacement proposal award. 5D, camera system NVR replacement proposal award. 5E, facilities master plan consulting service proposal award. Okay, moving on to item number 6, consideration of recommendation to approve. Well, we'll get that. The fundraising request, out-of-town field trips. Okay, we don't have any questions or discussions, so Mr. Superintendent, are you ready for your report at this time?
Yes, sir.
We hear the superintendent's report.
Morning, Mr. Chair, board members.
Morning.
Superintendent's report. Bless you. Superintendent's report for January 27th, 2022. As always, we'll start with our review of Dougherty County COVID-19 data. We'll go over our strategic plan update with 2 of our priorities. We'll discuss a digital forms, paperless workflow initiative to improve our efficiency. As you know, the legislative session started this month, and so we'll give you an update on legislative activity. We'll go over a few other items, and we'll leave an executive session to discuss property and personnel. As of the 26th, is yesterday, not as of the 10th. Our rolling 7-day average for new cases in Dougherty County is 103. It was 104 on the last board meeting of January 10th. Our 14-day spread is considered high. Our 2-week change is decreasing. We had gotten up to over 140 cases a day. We're down to 104. Our PCR positivity rate is 14.9. It was at 21.2 as of our last board meeting. Test turnaround time is still slightly over 48 hours. Contact tracing time is steady. And as of yesterday, Field Clinton had 149 COVID-19 positive patients in the hospital. as they have 84 as of January 10th. As you know, hospitalizations usually follow spikes, and so they lag about 2 to 3 weeks. So we're probably going to see an increase in hospitalizations over the next week or so, and over the next couple of weeks. And we should be seeing, based on the projections we're looking at, should be seeing a flattening of the daily cases and then a steady decline into the month of February. Our vaccination update for Dougherty County, ages 5 to 9, is 10.7%. At our last meeting, it was, I think, 7%, 7.5%. Ages 10 to 14 is 30.7%. Ages 15 to 19 is 37.7%. Total population, those with one dose. Total population in Dougherty County with at least one dose is 53%, and fully vaccinated is 48%. Both of those are up slightly, I think 1 percentage point each. Priority areas of focus for our strategic plan. We discussed these before: early literacy, academic rigor and relevance, social and emotional learning and supports, investment in human capital, and family and community engagement. Academic rigor and relevance for all students says we'll foster a culture of high expectations grounded in rigorous and relevant academic experiences so that each and every student is equipped with the tools to be college and or career ready. We've been talking about DOCO codes for a while. I think last school year we talked about DOCO codes, and DOCO codes is an initiative. It's an innovative transformational STEM-based initiative developed in collaboration with the school system, Ed Farm, and Apple. This initiative will expose Dougherty County school system students to coding and app development using iPads, Macs, and together with Apple's Everyone Can Code and Everyone Can Create curriculum. We're going to leverage the most advanced technology and software available, and the collaboration is designed to promote student success by giving students an opportunity to learn how to build leading-edge software and apps, which is a skill that's highly needed in the new economy. We'll have our launch of that tomorrow. You're certainly welcome to attend. I think we reached out to you. If you're able to attend, that'll be wonderful. If not, we certainly understand, but it'll be broadcast. The second area I want to talk about today deals with our social and emotional learning for students. We will ensure all students feel emotionally supported and are provided the social and emotional supports they require. We talked about before our response to COVID-19 and behavior interventions. We talked about this at a previous board meeting. That slide was used at a previous board meeting. And we've had several situations since the pandemic, not only in Dougherty County, but nationwide. We look at behaviors of students and getting reacclimated to being in the school environment. Quite frankly, there's been some challenges with behaviors, social and emotional needs as we talked before. So what we're looking at is proposing This Works Parent Intervention Program. It is to provide knowledge of social and emotional learning to parents, and used as a foundation of strategies to encourage emotional intelligent behavior in their children. And it promotes parental engagement, which is part of our strategic plan as well. And it brings the community closer by reintegrating parental engagement component both proactively and responsibly. 3 components to this: improving school culture and climate by utilizing restorative practices. As you know, restorative practices is a component of our charter. We discuss restorative practices in our charter for our charter system. So we're utilizing restorative practices through works and social and emotional learning curriculum. Promoting parental engagement, which is again part of our strategic plan. The works program brings the community closer together by reintegrating parental engagement, again, both proactively and responsibly. It also strengthens instructional leaders because the program will give them an additional tool in their toolbox when it talks about providing support for students. Overall, we want to help at-risk students with experiencing both poverty and trauma in the community. We've been through a lot in Dougherty County with the storms, with the pandemic being so hard hit, and as a result having seen significant losses. I think you will recall did a survey. We got 50 of our elementary students after the pandemic first hit. We did a poll with 50 of our elementary students lost immediate relatives during the pandemic. And along with Mount Zion Church, we provided them with opportunity to go to T Hall for a family outing and gave them a gift card. As part of the things that we did to try to support them, we've done a lot of things. We have a panorama social and emotional learning platform that we use in the classroom. This is more toward behavior for those students who have chronic issues, to help address them with our positive behavior interventions and supports program that we've implemented through our school climate and culture grant, as well as reinforcing that with our restorative practices program. We've trained all of our secondary principals and assistant principals, as well as our school resource officers, on the use of restorative practices to try to reduce the amount of discipline incidents and discipline referrals that lead to suspension, because kids can't learn when they're out in school. So what this will do, it will use restorative practices, but it also work with parents and parental engagement in order to reduce a disciplinary sanction. Parents will have to come to a session with their student on the school campus, and they will get trained in recognizing the behaviors that the students are doing, how that negatively impacts the school environment and them, and that way we'll get parents to help support their students in changing that behavior and work with the schools in doing so as well. So that's what we're planning to do with the Works program. And this program is being used in Muskogee County right now. Overall, the goal is to help parents and students recognize the part they played in the incident, in a disciplinary incident, take accountability for actions, and play a positive role in the healing process. Next, in Trotter and Permission Click, as we discussed, improving operational efficiency. Permission Click includes a district edition and a school edition, which both together seamlessly. And the school edition provides accounts for each school that provides the ability to consume district forms, transmit and receive forms from parents, and conduct day-to-day reporting on form responses. The forms that the parents fill out at the beginning of school with transportation information, contact information, things of that nature, allergies and things of that nature, field trip requests, permission slips, athletics forms, all those can be done, will be done digitally with no paper. They can be signed digitally. Then there'll be a repository online for us to be able to access whatever we need, so instead of having to be paper driven. That's the school edition. And the district edition has those forms as well, but it also helps us with our workflows in terms of our timesheets, in terms of our leave forms and other district forms and onboarding for human resources. Those forms can now be digital, signed digitally, and then we'll have them stored in a remote repository for access whenever we need. Legislative updates. As you know, the legislative session has begun. I'm going to try to keep you up to date on the latest developments at each board meeting. And if something happens between board meetings, I'll certainly send you an email advisory if called for. The state of the state addressed by the governor. The education highlights are as follows, and this is taken directly from the state of the state. Completing the largest teacher pay raise in state history. Of course, you know it, when the governor ran as a candidate, he committed to a $5,000 increase in teacher base pay. And in his first budget, he recommended $3,000 of that as a down payment. And the additional $2,000 was included in the second budget. But then COVID hit, so they had to reduce that. And he didn't recommend it last year because of the uncertainty with funding. So he's now recommending the additional $2,000, the remaining balance of the $5,000 commitment for this school year, for next school year in the 2023 budget. Also, for this school year, in the supplemental budget, he's recommending another one-time supplement for full-time state funded instructional staff and school support staff, as well as school administration. You remember last year he recommended a $1,000 supplement. This time he's recommending a $2,000 supplement for the same group, and a $1,000 supplement for school bus drivers, nurses, school nutrition workers, and part-time employees that are school-based. was being touted as the largest investment per student in state history. $425 million to fully fund schools and restore austerity cuts. Also, $1.4 billion in additional direct funding to K through 12 schools. Then he spoke of his initiatives to protect the rights of Georgia students and parents with the Parents' Bill of Rights, to address obscene material, and ensure fairness in school sports. We'll discuss those a little later. The amended budget, some details about the amended budget. Almost $383 million to restore austerity cuts to the QBE funding, and another $5 million to restore austerity to other programs supporting K through 12 instruction. $346 million for the one-time supplement of $2,000 to full-time employees at the school level and $1,000 to the non-certified support staff. And $93 million the adjustment to QBE, and $188 million to replace almost 1,750 school buses over the next 3 years as a key safety feature for transportation. Many school buses throughout the state don't have air conditioning and things of that nature and ventilation, and that came up in one of our advisory meetings. And so this is an attempt to modernize bus fleets across the state. The highlights for the K-12 FY23 budget, which starts July 1st, an additional $383,000 to restore austerity cuts will be carried over. And again, the $5.5 million to restore austerity cuts in other areas that support K through 12, and then $287 million, as I mentioned earlier, to increase the base pay for teachers statewide. Legislative updates. Proposed legislation. House Bill 385, the Return to Work Bill, allows TRS retirees to work full-time as classroom teachers while still receiving TRS benefits. And with that, but that is a part of the governor's teacher pipeline initiative that started last year. And so this bill, they would have to sit out 1 year from the time they retire. Of course, they could come back and work 49% for a year. They just couldn't come back full time immediately. But they come back 49% that first year. Then after that, they can work full time. This does currently have a sunset provision after 5 years. It'll be in effect 5 years. Then it'll have to be renewed. And this is in response to the teacher shortage that we have. And so we're trying to provide more opportunities to have teachers who have experience to come back to work if they choose to do so. It's gotten a little more restrictive than it initially was proposed. We didn't propose initially to have a lot of restrictions on it as it has gone through the legislative process. Two things that I think make it not as strong as it could be. One is that they say a person has to have retired with 30 years of service. And then the second is restricted to the three most critical needs based on RESA, based on the RESA numbers. So what will happen, the PSC would identify the vacancies by content area for our RESA, and so in the school districts in our RESA. The challenge with that is this: with the 30-year requirement is that if someone started working as a second career, say at 35, and then they retire at 60 with 25 years of service, that's still full retirement. But under the provision as it stands now, they wouldn't be able to come back to work. Using this bill, and with the RESA, with the top three categories, though we may have special ed, math, and English, but Miller County or a smaller county may have a need for a science teacher, and it's kind of hard to recruit people to rural Georgia. It's difficult in Albany. It's even more difficult in some other rural areas. So if they don't, if a science teacher is not the top three, then they could hire a science teacher in this regard. So we're trying. This is still proposed, and it's still in the legislative process. So we've made our comments and our feelings known that we think those are overly restrictive and it's counter to the spirit of the bill to provide access to retirees to come back and help impact the teacher shortage. And so we have reason to believe we encourage that we may have an opportunity to see some changes to loosen up some of these restrictions. We're certainly going to try to get that done, working through our legislative channels and have a conversation with our legislative delegation to help ensure they understand the restrictions that are caused by these provisions, how they would negatively impact our ability to attract retirees to come back to work. But it's still a good bill, and it's certainly better than nothing. We want to make it as good as it can be to provide as many options as possible for retirees to come back to work. And feel free to stop me at any time during any of these proposals if you feel like it. House Bill 999. It's a voucher bill. We see some of these every year. And this is called the Georgia Education and Freedom Act. It provides for the establishment of promised scholarship accounts or vouchers to be funded by the state in the amount of $6,000 per school for each participating student. So it allows the student parent to get $6,000 credit to go to a private school in Georgia. House Bill 1005, suicide screenings. It compels the school system to require all students aged 8 to 18 to undergo a suicide screening at the beginning of each school year, beginning with the 2022-2023 school year. As you know, as you might know, behavioral health, mental health issues are very challenging and they're increasing, particularly since the pandemic. And there's been an increase in youth suicide. And so this is an attempt to have schools do screenings. The devil will be in the details. Every student in our school system, from third grade, second or third grade to seniors, have to get screened once a year. So there are no details on the screening just yet. And so this is very new. It was just introduced recently. The return to work bill was introduced last year, and so it's been working for a year. The voucher bill, one gets introduced every year, and so it's similar to the ones that have been produced recently. This is the first time this bill has come up, and it's very new, so a lot of the details have not been hashed out yet, but I'll keep you updated on that as it goes. Yes, sir, Mr. Youngblood. Right. Yes. Right. Yes, so that's the way it reads right now. It's required. It compels each school system to require screening for 8 to 18. I don't know how that would work with parents, but that's what it reads right now.
Excuse me, we did not get the benefit of that question.
It could change significantly by the time it gets to a vote.
Mr. Dye.
Reverend Bush, you have a question?
Yes, sir. I couldn't hear Mr. Youngblood. We didn't get that question.
Yeah, Mr. Youngblood mentioned, he asked, was it a requirement? Was it requiring schools to require students to take the test? And I said, yes, it is right now in its current form. But again, it's very early in the process. This is a new bill, and by the time it goes through the legislative process, it could look significantly different at the end. And so he was discussing about the concerns about making it a requirement versus an option for parents, and I tend to agree with his concerns on that. Did I capture that right, Mr. Youngblood?
Yes, sir. That's pretty close. Well enough.
Any more questions about that? If not, then Senate Bill 226, obscene materials. The sale of or distribution of harmful materials to minors, which is in Code Section 16, is 16-12-103, will also be applicable to libraries operated by schools. Last year when this was introduced, it made it a criminal offense for the school employee who provided the obscene material, and it didn't really go into detail about what obscene meant. Since that time, it's no longer would no longer be a criminal offense, and now what it does, it requires the board to adopt a complaint resolution policy to address complaints submitted by parents or guardians of a child in the school system, and it also defines items harmful to minors. I mean, 3 conditions. Taken as a whole, it predominantly appeals to students in a not so favorable way. Is offensive to the standards of the adult community as a whole, with respect to what's suitable to minors, and taken as a whole, lacking in serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. Again, those are the conditions, and those conditions can be the definition of those or the meaning of those. The interpretation of those can vary widely depending on the people you talk to, because what's permissible or what we think is the prevailing standard of the adult community with respect to what's suitable for minors can differ significantly depending on the adults that you're talking to in what community. So there's still a lot of work, in my opinion, to be done to shore this up and to make it meaningful. As it stands right now, it could very well put a target on the backs of some school employees. If a particular parent doesn't believe something should be taught, and they can bring a complaint. It has improved. Last year, it would have made it a criminal offense for a teacher or a librarian to provide information. Now, it provides for the parent to do an appeal to the board to consider to get those items removed, which is a lot better than it would be to say you're going to file charges against a teacher for providing a book that a parent finds objectionable. As we try to look for ways, we want to make sure we protect students from obscene material, and we have a process in place. We have our items get reviewed by a committee of professionals and parents, and they give us feedback. As a matter of fact, we took some items off the list last year as part of that process. And this kind of codifies that as a statewide procedure. But we want to make sure we don't put the targets on the backs of our teachers as we look, as it's a difficult profession already, becoming more and more difficult over the last couple of years. We talk about the teacher pipeline drying up and not producing enough teachers. And then you don't want something like this that'll drive the ones that are here away, or keep the ones who are considering being a teacher away because of things like this. So we want to make sure we continue to work with our legislative partners to come up with a bill that's meaningful, but that's not overly punitive, and certainly doesn't appear to target our teachers who are doing a wonderful job in the classroom. Senate Bill 357, military student school choice. It allows students from a military family to attend a school of their choosing in a district in which the student resides, or in a district within a 50-mile radius. The parents will be responsible for the transportation. As you know, this bill kind of follows the policy that our board already approved that provides students of military families choice. You go to any school in Dougherty County, provided that we have space available, and whether they live in Dougherty County or any contiguous county, they have that opportunity. We passed that several years ago, maybe about 9 to 10 years ago, and so this is following that model. The bills that have not been introduced yet, but I anticipated that the governor referenced in his State of the State address, is the Parents' Bill of Rights and the Fairness in Sports Act. There's no details associated with those. Those bills have not been dropped yet. We do anticipate those bills coming forward because he mentioned them in his State of the State address. So as they come up and we get details, I'll certainly share that information with you in this venue or via email. If we don't have a board meeting, that'll be pending that. Other things, celebrations. As I mentioned to you before, we hosted our first robotics tournament last month, month before last. We had several schools, Alice Coachman, Lake Park, Sherwood, Turner, that won prizes, and they participated in the super regional competition in Columbus on January 22nd. I'm proud to say that we had 2 schools win 3 awards. Sherwood won the Core Values Award, and Lake Park won an award for their project and for robot performance. And also want to congratulate Lake Park they advanced to the state tournament, which will be held at Georgia Tech on February 5th. Kudos to both of those, to all four of the schools that went and represented us in regional very well, and the two that won awards at that tournament, and certainly kudos to Lake Park for advancing to the state tournament next weekend. Other challenges, other items, staffing challenges, as we discussed before, we're always looking for ways to provide additional benefits in the employee perks program to create a desirable environment for employees working in Dougherty County. Organizational structure changes, proposal coming in February. DOCO codes launch tomorrow, as I discussed, at 10 o'clock at 4CA. And then the mayor's prayer breakfast will be February 6th. And Ms. Johnson has tickets, which I bought a table this year that I typically do, and invite you to participate if you wish to do so. That'll be February 6th, I believe it is, and it's at Mary Acres Event Center. Is it February 6th, Ms. Johnson? February 3rd, I'm sorry. I'm going on memory. That's not good. February 3rd. Any questions? If not, then that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Board members, anybody have any questions to the superintendent about his report?
Yes, I just want to know about this student that received the accolades from Monroe High School.
Yes, sir. We have a.
Where is she planning to go to school, Mr.
Sir?
Albany State? Where is she planning to go to school? Albany State?
She has not said that I know of. I hadn't heard.
I do understand that Spelman College is one among the three that she's talked about most recently. Thank you, kindly.
Okay.
No comment. No comment.
Thank you all. All right. All right.
Is that Velvet?
All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Welcome aboard, Ms. Poole. We will now, board members will go into executive session.
I make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss personnel and property. Is that correct?
I second that motion.
All second, all say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are now in executive session. and we're gonna close this meeting and get ready for our regular meeting.
Well,
So-
Mr. Chairman, will we be able to do it consent agenda today? By chance,
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
will we be able to do a consent agenda, or is there discussions on some items?
We're getting feedback. We still didn't hear you, Miss Poole.
I was trying to see if we'll be able to do a consent agenda today.
Yes, once we get into the meeting.
Okay, just was asking before we started. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, we will call our regular board meeting to order. We'll ask you to join us in a moment of silence and in pledge of allegiance to the flag. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Mr. Lieutenant, do we have any comments, presentation at this time?
No, sir.
Right. We have a proposed change to the agenda to add 9B, the sale of the former South Georgia Regional Achievement Center building at 1001 Highland Avenue. And that's the only change that we have to the agenda. I will entertain a motion at this time to add that amendment to the agenda.
Make a motion that we amend the agenda to include item 9D, sale of property.
All right.
Second, Hadley.
Second, Poole.
All right, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposes, say nay. No opposes. The agenda is approved. Do we have any changes in the minutes? Right, if not, I entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from our January 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second, Hadley.
Popular motion second that we accept our minutes from January 10th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have to abstain because I was not in that meeting on the 10th,
Okay.
for the record. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Poole. I entertain a motion to approve a consent agenda 2
So move.
through 6.
Poole.
Second,
Okay.
Hadley.
All right, this is on item 2 through 6. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Motion have it. The consent agenda is approved. And item 9B, we will need a motion to accept that separately. Can we get a motion to accept 9B?
Motion to accept 9B.
Have a second? All right, we have a second to accept 9B. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Nay. All right, no opposes. So 9B has been accepted. We have a consent agenda. Mr. Superintendent, you have anything else at this time? Any board member have anything to bring to the board at this time?
Yes, sir.
Can we
Yes,
get-
sir. I have something.
All right, Reverend Bush, you have something to?
I think that you, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of y'all, thank you for your patience. I have talked about this now in meetings after meetings, and it is still on my heart. And we got a lot of money from the federal government, like $64 million. Plus, we have over $20 million in our reserves. And we gave an incentive to our staff members in the form of $1,000 to get vaccinated. And 92%, I think, if I'm not wrong, they have been vaccinated. Now, we have a student body here in Dougherty County, and yet they have not been vaccinated, the majority of them. I want to recommend and answer any questions anyone will have in regards to this. We got this money from the federal government to use in our community. And I think that it would be to good use if we were to just try to get our students vaccinated. This thing is dangerous right now, in my opinion. And no one, I don't think, they don't have crystal balls. They can't tell me when this is going to go away or when it's going to subside. And I want to recommend to the board members, if they find within their heart to support offering our students with the parents' consent of giving them $100 to be vaccinated. And I think that it is a need. It's a lot of folks are dying, old and young people. And I think that it will just enhance our community. We will have less people getting sick or possibly dying from the COVID. And I think that we need to get on board and offer our students an incentive and do the right thing about our students. And Mr. Chairman, that's in the form of a recommendations to the board.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Bush. Board members, you've heard the recommendation coming from Reverend Bush in the court. He said recommendation. He didn't make a motion. He just said recommendation. Well, I think we need to hear from the superintendent first and maybe see if we can afford that. We just can't, in my opinion. Let's see what the superintendent has to say.
Well, yes, sir. If it's the board's desire, we could certainly put a plan together to provide for an incentive for our students. We would first check with our folks at the Department of Education to ensure that it's allowable. I think it will be, but we want to do that to make sure first. And at $100 for 13,000, if all 13,500 students it'll cost us about $1,350,000, which is certainly doable in terms of being able to afford it. We've had some discussions about incentivizing the vaccine for students in the past. There's no movement on that, but if it is the board's will to do so, then we can certainly put the procedures in place to make that happen. Again, first we will start with projecting the cost, which would be a maximum of about $1.3 million. Second, we would talk to the folks at the DOE and the Federal Programs Department to ensure that it's allowable. And if they say that's allowable with the ESSER funded, then we can put procedures in place to make that happen and promote it. So it's depending on what the board wants to do.
Okay. So board members, what is your wish? What is your pleasure at this time?
This is Norma Heath. I have a comment or a question to
Go ahead,
ask.
Ms. Heath.
In addition to that, what are we doing about securing the proper face mask for students as well as teachers?
When you say the proper face mask, you mean the KN95?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. We
KN95.
with the latest guidance from the CDC saying that they recommend the N95 or KN95 mask over the cloth mask when the Omicron variant came, because it was much more transmissible. We began sourcing those. We have not gotten pricing on those yet, but we have begun looking at pricing for that in terms of a reliable supplier. Those masks are much more expensive than the cloth masks. Many of those are given to us. But again, we have the resources. That's what the ESSER money was for. And so we're in the process of sourcing the N95 or KN95 mask from a reliable vendor. There's some supply chain issues right now with all items associated with the pandemic. But we are looking at upgrading our inventory to include KN95 masks and provide those at no cost to our students and our employees, just as we have with the cloth masks and surgical masks.
Doctor,
Yes. Mr. Youngblood.
I do believe in the vaccine. I think it's very important for people to be vaccinated. And I'll come publicly, I've been fully vaccinated and had the booster as well, and still follow precautions. In my family, I have different opinions. People have children. I do believe in the parents' responsibility and their right to determine what happens with their children. There have been community incentives to get families vaccinated, monetary, gift cards, things of that nature. What I don't want to put the school system in the position of trying to influence these children, to put pressure on their parents to get this done. We discussed this once before with the idea of iPads and things of that nature. I think that we should continue to promote the vaccination in the community, but I don't think we should get in the role of trying to put pressure on the parents. Most parents at this point have decided whether or not to have their children vaccinated. It has to be with their permission. They would have taken that move and done it, especially with the incentives that have been out there. It's almost like peer pressure when you go through the grocery line, or you've seen other kids when they get rewards or incentives, then they go home, they want it too. They put pressure on their parents when that may not be, it puts another challenge for parents. So I do think that's a parent's right and responsibility. And I think that, again, I do believe in vaccinations. I think doing, social media posts, advertisements to support those efforts are there, but to give incentives to the students. I know my kids would come home real quick saying, give me an iPad. And I know this is a monetary one, and they would have put pressure on me and would have challenged my moral and my authority at home. So I think we need to stay out of that part with our young people. We do have a lot of influence over, and peer pressure does as well. And I'm not sure parents is challenging enough now for them to raise their children. That's all.
Ms. Strother, I believe you had a comment.
I did, and it's echoing a lot of what Mr. Youngblood said. Just that I feel like we do have a lot of influence, but we need to be careful. It's a fine line for us as an authority figure in schools to walk that line. And I feel like this would be crossing it. This would be crossing it into, this is a parent's decision kind of territory. I think while I understand the motivation behind the suggestion, I think we just kind of have to maybe go about it a different way, not by incentivizing it, just by continuing to educate and promote from our stance.
Okay, are there any other
Mr. Chairman.
comments? Reverend Bush?
May I say something?
Yes. Go
I,
ahead,
I,
Reverend
I agree. I agree that we cannot tell parents what to do. I think that the parents will decide if they want their child vaccinated. If they don't, they won't. And I would like to go further. That after all of the discussion, I have a motion that we incentivize our young people, if the parents would concur, to give them $100 for if they are completely vaccinated. That's my motion when we complete this discussion.
So that's a form of a motion, Mr. Bush.
Yes, ma'am.
And I second that, but to let Mr. Dyer decide on the staff to decide what the incentive should be. That's the only thing that I would have added. So I know it's going to be a second before I have a
It's
discussion.
Miss Poole,
Yes.
it's kind of hard to hear what you're saying. You mind repeating, please?
I'm in an actual event, sorry, but I didn't know he was going to put it in the form of a motion. So once it's second, then can we have a discussion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Miss Hutler?
when Mrs. Poole finishes, I'd like to make comment.
Okay.
And I was going to do a counter motion. That's what I was doing to allow the staff to decide together on the incentive to the students. So I was putting that in the form of a second motion, not second motion, a substitute motion.
All right, you're talking about a substitute motion?
Substitute motion to allow the staff to decide on the incentive for our students.
For the staff to decide on what?
What is the best incentives for our students?
Okay, you want to ask the staff to decide what is the best incentive for our students.
Yes, sir. Allow the staff, Mr. Dyer and his staff to decide what the incentive and bring it back to our recommendation.
Okay, question, Ms. Heath?
Okay, I'm a little off here because did the motion die?
It did for like a second.
He seconded. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Just a moment, Reverend Bush.
Pointed out I needed to be at the mic, excuse me. But the way that works is the first motion is still alive and it's in a second, but Ms. Poole made a substitute motion, so it's the board's position that have to vote on the substitute motion first. And depending on whether that's voted up or down will depend on whether you go forward with the main motion.
Oh,
Substitute motion requires a second.
just,
That hasn't gotten a second.
can I ask a point of order? Did Ms. Poole actually second Reverend Bush's motion?
No,
or
I
she
did
put
a substitute motion.
She did. I thought she
can't do it.
did, but maybe she didn't. Let's see.
I thought she did too.
I think the intent is to further review on
Yeah.
before it comes forward.
I thought she substituted and then made a substitute motion. Isn't that right, Mr. Chairman?
What,
That's the way I understood it.
My intent was to do a substitute motion because he never got a second for his motion.
I didn't
I
hear.
said
We,
substitute,
you keep
I
fading
thought-
in and out, Ms. Poole.
Yeah, I can't. I'm out in the country. I do apologize, but it was a substitute, not a second.
Yeah, substitute and a second. So
he said a
did both of
substitute,
them.
not a second.
She did not second? Okay.
Yeah, so substitute motion. So let's,
But
can
she
we,
doesn't need a substitute motion because if there's no second, the first motion would die for a lack of a second, and then she can make another motion. That's what, Mr.
I
Chairman,
wanted
if you
to
All right,
would
did we
ask-
have a, do we have a second to Reverend Bush motion?
I wanted to make comments before the motion. And
All right,
I was never
Miss-
allowed to, plus I had my hand up as well.
All right, Miss Hutley, we'll hear you now.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chair. I am very concerned that we, as a board, will be getting into taking from parents. stepping into their respective homes and telling them that here's some money for your child if you take them to get them vaccinated. That's a parental decision, in my opinion. And I am not comfortable with incentivizing what should be decided by parents and parents alone. I think we've gone too far now in considering doing something like that. I am very careful when even I want to give money to my grandchildren without their parents first make a decision, because I've always told children you're not to accept anything outside of this home, etc. But I don't want to interrupt what exists between their parents and child. And when we start doing things like that, that's an interference I don't think that we are ready for. Thank you kindly.
Ms. Heath, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that ultimately it is the decision of a parent whether or not they accept or reject the incentive. So that's just like it was with the staff members. They had an option. Either they could do it or they could choose not to do it. But in an effort to protect our children as well as our staff members, there should be something that we come together at with the consensus as a board to do to protect our children.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Heath. Mr. Youngblood.
And Mr. Chairman, when you get a change.
Motion is not carried. We have a second.
Right.
What I turned the speaker on, I'm sorry. What I kind of get a feeling is that at this point, the board is very split on this matter, and that Ms. Poole, and not trying to speak for Ms. Poole, but Ms. Poole's substitute motion was an effort to put it back to the superintendent to do the exploratory parts, and then at a later board meeting have more information as to whether it's financially feasible, all of those things. I may be wrong. At this point, I guess we don't have a motion to move forward.
So let me ask you this.
Mr.
All right, Reverend Bush, you did have a comment. Go ahead. Reverend Bush.
Yes, sir. I think we, as the chairman of the finance committee, I think we have the money without a doubt, and we have the money from, as I said, we have reserved. We could pay for it ourselves, but if we want to find a reason not to, we can. And I think that we have the $6 to $4 million from the federal government to use to help enhance our community, and it's going to help our children, in my opinion, if they become vaccinated. And that's my only concern. Not, I don't care who I have to confront about it and say that I didn't do this and that. I think it's good. It seemed to me that I remember. Well, never mind that. But at any rate, I think that it's a good thing that if we were to give our children, if they were to get permission from their parents to get the shot, because it's going to help our school system, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Bush. Board members, can we do this? Ms. Poole said, let the superintendent come up with a plan or some ideas as to how to go about doing this, because we seem to be split at this point. So, can we get a consensus? Just say, let's put it in the hand of the superintendent, and he make recommendation to us at a later board meeting.
And it's already just for clarity, because it is a substitute motion, only thing it needs is a second, correct, Mr. Attorney or Mr. Chairman?
But, let me say this. You can't make a substitute motion until the other motion dies, Sister Val.
Well, it was that nobody had said anything as a second. That's the reason I brought that up. So, and because we didn't get an opportunity to discuss, I had to stop.
Board members,
Right now, we have no motion to action.
board members, we have no action on anything. We're gonna let the our attorney clear up things, and we'll go from there.
Yes, sir. Reverend Bush made a motion, but it received no second. Mr. Chairman, I assume you would say that motion died. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's no need for a substitute motion. If Ms. Poole wants to make a motion now, she can just motion on the whatever action she'd like to take.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. So, board members, did you all understand that and hear what the attorney said?
Yeah, so will we make a motion to allow the staff to look into incentives and bring it back to the board for recommendation?
Second the motion.
All right, the motion is second that we will ask Mr. Dyer and his staff to look at this and bring a recommendation back to the board. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All,
I'm opposed.
all opposed?
Opposed.
Aye.
I mean opposed. Okay, we need a roll call.
Strother, opposed.
All right, Ms. Strother, what did you say?
I'm opposing that motion.
All right, Ms.
I'm not
Strother,
for it.
Reverend Bush.
I'm for the motion.
Okay, Ms. Hutley. Ms. Hutley, are you for or opposed the motion?
I submit to the recommendation that the superintendent looks into possibilities.
All right. So that's a yes. All right, Ms. Poole, you made the motion. So that's a yes for you.
Yes, superintendent.
And Mr. Youngblood.
I'm opposed to the motion. I think that's already within the authority of the superintendent. If he wants to do an investigation or not, it doesn't necessarily have to be done by a motion.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Heath?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm yes. So we have 5-2. All right, 5-2 in favor of the motion. Anything else? All right, if nothing else, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion second to adjourn, all in favor say aye. We all adjourn.